So hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us. I'm joined here by Tom Stevens, who is former Chief Customer Officer and Director of Brand and Customer Experience at British Airways. Tom,
Hi.
thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
My first question for you is, airports and airlines have featured a lot in the news lately due to long queues, baggage pile-ups and workforce shortages. Just interested to know, what do you make of it all?
Yeah, it's obviously been a really challenging time for airlines around the world and airports as well. And I think all different parts of the world are at different stages of that. If you look in like North America, a lot of the challenges now seen in Europe, they were having a year ago, and actually are now facing different challenges with pilot shortages, etc. So the challenge has moved as different countries have opened up. I think also though, for anyone that's travelled recently, you'll see that the experience has got a lot better. So there's a lot of kind of media sensational hype around queues. They exist in certain places, but we need to remember that existed pre-COVID as well. I think where we're seeing significant challenges in the handling on the ramp, which is why you're seeing the baggage problems that exist globally, and it really comes down to a labour challenge, getting people to come and work at the airport versus working at other places. So it's a challenge we'll overcome, but it's going to take a few more months to really wash it out of the system.
And why do you think people aren't interested in returning to aviation? Have we lost our glamour and edge, as some might say?
So you've got different issues actually going on. So you've got some issues where people are not coming back into the airport, and that's because they can get the same money by working somewhere else, right? Why would you want to come to work at 4 o'clock in the morning in the cold and the snow when you could go and work in Starbucks or in the Amazon warehouse or driving for Uber or whatever? So it's a lot of that it's not necessarily that they've fallen out of love with aviation, but there is other opportunities that are offering a similar package that are easier for them to go to. And I think that's the main thing that's driving it. There is then a secondary challenge, which is particularly in the UK, that even if you find the person, getting them security cleared to work at the airport is actually the challenge. And this is because you need clear referencing history. Lots of people have got breaks in employment because of COVID, and actually if you go and ask other companies for references, they're very slow at giving them because everybody is constrained and challenged. So you've kind of got these two issues going on. If you can find the person, that's your first problem. The second problem is actually getting them into the airport.
So there's a lot of hoops to jump through then if you're UK based.
In UK in particular, in other parts of the world and airlines that I talk to, it's still a challenge, but nowhere near as difficult as it has been in the UK.
It's really interesting. So how long would it actually take to get security cleared then?
It can completely vary, and it can take from a month up to 6 months.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's a challenge for everybody that needs a security ID to work anywhere in the airline ecosystem.
I would be interested to hear your view on changes in behaviour that we're seeing with passengers. What are the big changes and which do you think will be here to stay?
I think in some of the behaviour has been around coming earlier to the airport. So a lot of the media attention on queues and disruption means that customers are feeling a lot more anxious about travel and so are arriving earlier. I think that is taking a while to come out of the system, is actually making things worse. The other thing that's difficult to tell at the moment is you've got a completely different customer mix. So you tend to have more customers travelling for leisure or visiting friends and relatives. They're bringing more bags to the airport and adding to that strain. So I think there's some of the challenges. I think actually a lot of the temporary measures we put in place during COVID haven't stuck, and customers are just demanding to go back to things that previously existed. So a lot of the touchless technology and things like that are actually now less important to customers than it appeared during COVID. So I think actually you've got quite a return to pre-pandemic ways of working.
And what is the next big thing in air travel and what are your trends to watch?
The next big thing in air travel, there's a whole load of stuff out there at the moment that's coming through. There's a lot of things that we've been talking about for a long time, but I think are now really coming to fruition. So particularly in the airport space, it's all around biometrics, identity management. If you look at what's going on at FTE, people are all pitching that technology. It's been around for 10 years, and in the UK we've been using it for 10 years for domestic customers. But actually it's now really starting to come to the fore, and I think that's the next big thing to come. You've then got the more futuristic thinking beyond that, but that's probably another 5-10 years away. But the mainstream adoption, I think, will be around biometric technologies is the next thing to watch.
In your opinion, do airports and airlines collaborate enough?
Yeah, so collaboration between airlines and airports is really, really important. My experience of that, both in London but also talking to other colleagues, is at an operational level, the two get on really well, and it's all about delivering for that customer on the day, and that tension doesn't really exist. Actually, the tension tends to exist mostly around commercial practices between the two, but and because of that, there's a fear of sharing data in particular. And if the two parties share data with each other, the customer experience would be better. We've got this constant battle about who actually owns the customer. And the reality is the customer is all of our customers and wants to travel through. The customer might actually have more loyalty to the airport as a departure point than the whole airline. So we need to collaborate more, and we need to simplify the journey for customers. They don't understand that the airline is responsible for selling a ticket. You've got a ground handling party, you've got an airport. And I think in the best examples, you need to try and strip all of that out and make it seamless. So there's definitely a lot of work to do in bringing people together.
Yeah, it's a very complicated ecosystem with lots of different stakeholders.
Yeah, it's a very complicated model, but it has got potential, particularly now with data and tech, to bring all of that together. And I think if that happens over the next few years, we'll really start to see improvements. For example, you shouldn't have more than one app to travel. So why are you downloading an airport app, a food and drink app, an airport app? That stuff needs to come together.
Absolutely. Now, in your opinion, what can airports learn from airlines about passenger experience?
What can airports learn from airlines? I think the airline, you need to look at things around service and about the actual experience. A lot of airports are very functionally based, so they're functional in terms of getting the customer through, getting them departed, or they're retail focused. Airlines tend to be more service and experience and how does the customer feel, and more on the emotive side. And there's actually a part for all of it to come together. So I wouldn't say necessarily that airports need to learn from airlines. There's a lot actually that airlines should learn from airports as well. It's that collaboration piece. If we're all trying to operate in the same way, talk to the customer in the same way, deliver the same experience, that's where we'll all win as an aviation community, rather than all trying to do a slightly different version of the same thing.
What are the challenges for the future that you foresee, and how do we solve them?
So the challenges for the future, probably your immediate challenges are going to be around just ramping back up again. So actually a lot of airlines have got themselves to kind of an 80% mark. Yes, some have grown to bigger than pre-pandemic, but a lot of people are at 80%. There's going to be an initial challenge to get that back, and customer expectation is high that that's delivered. Once we go beyond that, so I think some of our biggest challenges are going to come from sustainability, and how are we really going to make that work as an airline and an aviation community, there's a lot of stuff around sustainable fuels, that sort of thing, but also there's a lot of product that's given to customers that's not very sustainable. Plastic water bottles, complimentary amenity kits and so on. And actually, if you take those away, customers think you're cost cutting. So it's a really fine balance between how do you become sustainable and it doesn't look like you're trying to penny pinch the customer at the same time. I think they're probably the two biggest ones over the next couple of years to look out for.
I know, even on my flight on the way here, I kept lamenting the fact that they were giving me teeny tiny water bottles that were made of plastic, and all of the plastic wrapping that you get in the, for example, the blankets. Yeah.
So there's a whole load of plastic on the plane. But if you want to become sustainable, you basically have to take everything away. There's some clever stuff you might do with unbundling. So some airlines have started like amenity kits in premium cabins. Rather than giving you everything, have it all on demand. So if you don't want a toothbrush, you don't get given a toothbrush, whereas today it's forced upon you by many airlines. That's the kind of clever way to use tech to achieve some sustainability.
Now, what is your vision for the future of air travel?
The future of air travel.
How would you like to travel in 10 years' time?
My view of the future of air travel is that it needs to become seamless. You need to remove the stress from it. So at the moment, what we do is we've created a process and we force customers and passengers to go through it and basically to comply with the way that we want to work. Actually, you have a lot of experiences outside of aviation, and that's what you become used to as a consumer. And so that's what airlines and airports need to think of. And we need to start to have some radical thinking away from just trying to optimize the touch points. Why should you be checking a bag in at the airport at a check-in counter? Why should you be going through security? It's not just about making that better, it's actually about, do you even need it, and how could it operate in a different way? So I think that's the real vision. How do you get it completely seamless and a stress-free experience?
And last question, are you positive for the future?
I think the future is really positive. I think airlines are going to go, my personal opinion is airlines are going to go through this next phase, particularly with what's going on in the global economy, and how does that impact travel. At the moment, we've been spending, as an airline community, a lot of money on ramping up, and there's actually quite a high cost base probably being built back into the ecosystem, and so that's going to be a challenge and one to watch. I think that's the biggest threat over the next year or so.
Tom, that was my last question. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.